All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great topic. We are going to continue on our series, our Painfully Honest series. We're going to talk about consistency, why it's so important, and why it's so difficult. We're going to keep it condensed down to some short topics of what you should be consistent about, why you need to be consistent, and then how to accomplish that. Just wanted to reference John C. Maxwell's quote here of small disciplines repeated with consistency every day lead to great achievements gained slowly over time. Wanted to bring it up to kind of dispel the the myth or the habit, I guess, of current culture of instant gratification and bring awareness to the idea that consistencies comes into play usually over the mid long term, not over the short term. So that's going to be how we come at it today. With that, we'll introduce Dr. Roger Hall. He's a business psychologist, executive coach, a multi-time author, and public speaker. And the part I like the most is the neuro nerd aspect of him actually understanding how our biology works and how we can execute on the things we talk about. How you doing today, Dr. Hall?
I am doing quite well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. This one I think is going to be painful for me because consistency is tough.
It is for everybody, Jared.
You know, you see some people and they seem to just kind of have that down, and I guess it's just their good ability to project that, and not necessarily they're probably not doing it for most people. Would be my
Yeah,
guess.
Jared, I think we all have different innate levels of that.
Mm,
I've got a son who is he's just a machine.
interesting.
Um, and but he's been that way since birth.
It's wired.
Super he's just wired that way. But for others of us, it really requires a little bit more work, and for some of us, a lot more work. But it is achievable. It's easier for some, harder for others, but everybody needs it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the importance of that, but let's do some real quick housekeeping items here. For those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jared Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. We do have a sponsor for today. It's the Perfect Real Estate business. We've been developing this over the last couple of decades. There's a number of attributes that we bring to the Perfect Real Estate business to help you, create and sustain, maintain that personalized, perfect real estate business, introducing in large part with Dr. Hall, business coaching, life coaching, mentoring, training. We even get into things like lead generation, passive income, and things like that. So if you want to learn more, how we look at reinventing real estate, we'd love to chat more with you about that. But let's chat a little bit about more about what you just said. And I heard a gentleman on a call, actually it was earlier today, oddly, that said he's just wired different. And I think that's what you're talking about. Some people just have that consistency, that machine mindset, that uh, initiative, motivation, whatever. What is the consistency component of that? Like, uh, you can be a machine and do a lot, but you got to be consistent. Hopefully, about specific things. As an example, what are we consistent about? Um,
Well, I think I think the way people get successful is they set up processes or habits so that they can't help but do the right thing, and and those are the people for whom it appears that life is easy for them, but they've just set up the systems, they set up the processes, they set up the habits, so they don't really have to think about it anymore.
so their behaviors are directly or more, not perfectly, but more aligned with the results or the outcome, the objectives that they want.
Right, right, and very often they're little decisions, all of which save cognitive bandwidth and make it easier for them to do the right things. Um, you know, I I'll give you a personal example. My wife makes fun of me because I don't have any wild colored shirts and I don't have any checks. I don't have any plaids. And she says, why not? And I said, because everything's built off what pair of shoes I'm wearing. So if I wear brown shoes, boom, everything goes off that. And then I have black shoes. And if I wear black shoes, boom, everything goes off that. And she says, it's the grown-up version of Garanimals. I have two pairs of shoes or two colors of shoes I typically wear, and that makes all of my decisions easier. So I pretty much look the same all the time, and it probably that's an indication of my poor fashion sense, but it's consistency, and that consistency helps me to save my decisions. And so people who are great at things, they just set up these systems so that they're constantly doing the right thing. Financially, I'll give you an example. How do you make it automatic? You want to be a saver? Well, you can write out a check, and manually take it to the savings account, or you can set up an automatic withdrawal. And so if you have to write a check for, they're on average 20 to 25 work days a month. And so if you say, I want to save $1,000 a month, then you divide it by 20 or 25, and then you have an automatic withdrawal of, what is that? 50 bucks?
It's just
$50 a day. Boom, 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 boom. And you don't have to think about it. It's this consistent sort of feed. And that's what makes people successful, is this consistent feed, this automatic process, so that they don't have to think about it.
Well, I love this topic, and I think this is the meat of where we're going to go for sure. But let's backtrack just a little bit on the what you're consistent about, because one of the things we've talked about in prior podcasts that we should introduce here is, to be consistent about something that isn't successful or hasn't been proven isn't very helpful. So what we talk about in the Perfect Real Estate business is, doing something that you love, as I indicated here, because you're more inclined to be productive doing something you love. So let's help you map to what you love to do to make you productive. And then let's make a plan to do that. I mean, you can be consistent at something, but if it's not thoroughly thought out and not helpful, you're consistently not moving in the right direction very fast.
Yeah. I mean, if you're consistently, smoking crack, it's probably not going to be helpful. It's probably not going to be a great outcome. So nobody needs to be, once they're addicted to crack, they don't need to be motivated, because the drug does it enough. Most of the stuff we need to be consistent with is not immediately pleasurable. It's immediately a little friction-y. And it doesn't become easier till later. And so we need to set up these systems to be consistent on things that initially take a little bit of effort. And I'll give you an example with exercise. Exercise, people go, it's so hard. It's just, The reality is the friction is the first 5 minutes.
Right.
The first 5 minutes of any exercise is really not wonderful. But when you get to about minute 6, minute 7, it's like, it's not so bad. I feel pretty good. I should keep doing this. So the consistency helps you overcome that initial friction until the activity, whatever is healthy for you, whatever is productive, whatever helps you earn more money, becomes pleasurable. So finding an interest is one thing. Finding something you love is one thing. But doing it, there's always some friction. I mean, who wouldn't want to just sit on the couch and eat Doritos?
I think that's a good point preceding what my point was, in that to find what you want to do, but that most consistency that's good for you is difficult. Like you said.
At the beginning.
At the beginning, yeah. So I think it's find out what you should be consistent at, realize that if it's going to be good, initially it's going to be difficult. I think that's an awareness that's critical.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't need to be consistent. I need to be consistently eating ice cream. I really got to keep that up. No, because that's immediately pleasurable.
Right.
it's other things that aren't immediately pleasurable
Yeah.
that we need to set these systems up for.
Yeah, and I think context is very helpful as well because my contacts, especially in these podcasts, is typically real estate, obviously. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you're going to get healthier, what are you going to do? Are you going to walk? Well, what does that mean? Be consistent at walking. If you're going to build muscle, be consistent about going to the gym and strength training. Figure out what it is that you're doing. Hopefully, I think this is a good example. Actually, I don't like to run. I just don't like to run,
Neither
but
do I.
I've come to grow to love to walk.
Yeah.
So that's my exercise. I walk. My next kind of phase is building uh, muscle for different reasons. But
Yeah.
initially, kind of get to the weight I wanted. I was like, hey, walking's easy. I can habit stack, and we'll get to the how. That's going to come into this. But yeah, pick what it is you're going to do. Realize if it's good for you, it's probably going to be difficult at first, but then be consistent at it and
Yes.
do the version of it. Like I think most good fitness instructors would tell you, do something you're actually going to stick with.
Yeah. I mean, my advice about exercise is the single best exercise that I recommend is the one you'll actually do.
Yep.
I don't really care what it is. What's the thing that you will do? And people go, well, that doesn't seem like that counts. I don't know. Are you sweating? Seems like it counts.
Yeah. Yeah. You go through all these different gyrations you listen online and they're like, um, oh, I'm gonna drop forget the names, but high intensity versus low intensity hit.
Yeah,
Oh
hit
yeah, there you
exercise.
go.
High intensity interval training. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the most productive use of your time, and that the shortest amount of time with the most amount of calories burned and blah blah blah. But if you're not going to do high intensity because for whatever reason you just don't like it, to your point,
You should probably go for a walk,
yeah,
which is better than sitting on the couch eating Doritos.
yeah. So if you can't do Plan A, do Plan B because you'll actually do Plan B,
Yes.
which Doritos is Plan Z, and that's not helpful. And by the way, come to find out that low intensity stuff doesn't typically create a scenario whereby you feel like, hey, I can take in more calories. High intensity, you find that, hey, I've earned it and I've burned all those calories and
Starved.
now you eat more. So anyway, yeah, I think the point is figure out what you're going to be consistent about and dovetail it into stuff you love to do so that you actually do it. That's the
Yeah,
gist of what
I'm probably never going to be consistent with bookkeeping. I mean, I hate it. I hate it at the
Same.
beginning. I hate it in the middle. I hate it at the end.
Same.
So for stuff like that, I hire that out to people who, at some point in the process, really like it and are really good at it.
Yeah.
You do have to marry what's good for you and what you can enjoy to some degree or another. And there are some activities that are neither, and those are the ones you hire other people to help you with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So figure out what you're going to be consistent about, and then the next I had is why. And out of anything that you've taught me over time, this is the one I love the most because it's applicable in almost every area of our lives. Is you manage what you monitor. So if you're doing something consistently and you're seeing either progress or lack of progress, you're monitoring that. Usually it's our context is monitoring your thoughts, metacognition.
Yeah, for
But
me, yeah, that's what I do. But it works everywhere.
yeah, yeah, and especially inconsistency. If I'm going to walk, for the next 3 months, how far am I walking? What speed am I walking? And am I monitoring? Is my cardio getting better? Is my weight going down? Anyway, what are the results of what I'm doing? Is it being offset by eating too much? I got to
Right.
manage all that. So I think that's critical. I don't know if you have any more insight into that component of how that helps with consistency.
The why?
Yeah. Specifically the monitoring.
The
What you're
monitoring thing. If you don't measure something, that's the monitoring. If you don't measure it, if you don't pay attention to it, you don't even know what you're doing. You can't control what you're not measuring, what you're not monitoring. We didn't know air existed until someone was able to measure it.
Mm.
It was just what we were in. You know, a fish doesn't know it's wet, and we don't know where we're in air because it's just always there
Yeah.
until somebody measured. Oh, hey, there's this thing. There's air pressure. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Now that we measure it, we can do a lot more. We can predict weather.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to go too far into this tangent, but I think it's super important that when you are monitoring this stuff, you know, the monitoring your thoughts comes into immediate play that, hey, if I have success today, I'm probably in a good headspace to keep that momentum. But tomorrow, if I measure it and I'm not seeing good progress, it can been, could begin to defeat my consistency because I'm like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. I think that's important to know that it's not always going to
Yeah,
play out that way.
you're not always going to see a steady progress. And so what I have always coached my people on is what I call sawtooth progress.
Hmm.
And sawtooth progress, progress never goes up like this. It's just never a straight line. It's always a zigzag line going up. And so if you look at today versus yesterday, oh, it's down today. Yeah, well, tomorrow it'll be up again, and it may be up a little bit higher than it was 2 days ago. And so you've got to look at the long-term trend rather than today versus yesterday. And so that's what I encourage people to do is look at the long-term trend rather than what does it look like today. You know, if you get on the scale every day, it's like, wow, 0.2 of a pound. Oh, I'm ballooning up. Well, you have that much variability all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Did you go to the bathroom? Did you, any
yeah,
number of things?
I mean, did you eat a lot of salt yesterday? And your body's then retaining a lot of fluid. So I mean, there are all sorts of reasons for this stuff. I would encourage people just to look at the long term for measuring those things.
Yeah, that was my point in all this. I think it's important to know some of the details, but the longer term is going to be the most helpful for you, so you don't have the roller coaster, of ups and downs. The one that comes to my mind the most recently is when I do stuff that kind of has a muscle building attribute to it, like I go out mountain bike riding.
Yeah,
I build muscle, and my weight jumps up because
sure.
muscle's dense, and so you can't monitor something and not monitor what you're doing and the activity that's creating different outcomes. But anyway, so I think the mid long
Yeah,
term view of what you're doing is most important.
right. And maybe a different measure would be better rather than the scale. It's like, do my pants fit? You know, and if your pants fit, you're probably okay.
Yeah, yeah. Or mine was interesting because my scale will tell me if it's body fat or muscle mass.
Okay.
So, but then you got to drill into a lot of this detail, which can get kind of overwhelming and frustrating. But I think the important part is that and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the importance of that long term. Let's not look for instant gratification because that's kind of the death of most people these days. It's been a week. Why didn't I lose 5 pounds or whatever? So never mind. That didn't work. I got to look for something else.
Yeah, I think because of the advances in our technology, for which I'm grateful, we have it has become very easy to see results. Just look at a microwave. Before
Yeah.
microwaves, it took a lot longer to get things hot.
Yeah.
And now we just take it for granted that I'm going to throw this thing in there, and 30 seconds later I'm going to have something that's warm, as opposed to 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In the oven or wherever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well said. The other item that I have here that I thought was very important for us to talk about today is this whole, and we've had I think a whole podcast, if not a good chunk of a podcast, talking about the perception that motivation is what is going to drive you to be successful. And I want to talk about that one. I'll let you handle that one because that's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important point that it probably bears repeating, which is 50 or 60 years of research on motivation teaches us that motivation doesn't lead to hard work. Hard work leads to motivation. The end. What what we keep trying to find is some external motivation. And there's a great book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and he makes the distinction between a pro and an amateur. He says a pro works even when they don't feel like it. Even if it produces nothing, they still work. An amateur waits for the muse to inspire him or her. And he said, if you're waiting for a muse to inspire you, you're always going to be waiting and wondering, and you're never going to create a masterpiece. And so masterpieces come from people who are consistent and they just go do the work. He outlines, he's a writer, and he outlines his writing ritual. You know, he goes to his desk, he's wearing his lucky hoodie. You know, by this point, he's probably gone through 3 or 4, and he just goes down and he starts pounding on the keys. That's what makes for good writing. And it's not that every day he creates a masterpiece. He says, sometimes I just get a paragraph done. You know, I give myself a 2-hour, 4-hour block, and sometimes I get a ton of stuff written, and some days I get nothing written, and that's just the way it is sometimes.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the sawtooth progress. Some days you just get a paragraph, some days you get a whole chapter, some days you get a little bit somewhere in the middle. But over time, you're building, and creating something that didn't exist before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to have a brief part of this sub-conversation around the sometimes natural inclination is I'm not motivated, so therefore I'm not going to be consistent. But just by being consistent and putting action, you know, in progress, that's what's going to create momentum.
Well, yeah, and once you're in it, you move into flow, and you move into the enjoyment of solving a difficult problem. It's not fun at first. So again, that first 5 minutes of exercise it's full of friction. Once you start doing it, it's like, why did I wait so long?
Yeah. Well, and so I put the third line in here because I think another kind of roadblock to consistency is excuses, right? One excuse is I'm not motivated. So we just address that, right? You gotta that if I'm not motivated, you're thinking,
suck it up, Buttercup.
Yeah, suck it up, get it done. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, and I think the other kind of problem that can come into play with consistency is identifying whether you're coming up with an excuse or a reason, right? Like some people, they'll say, so I've heard it a lot, like, oh, such and such came up, and I'm like, and sometimes I'll call them out, sometimes I won't, but that's an excuse. That's not a reason. You know,
what's the difference in your mind? Because I think there's a perceptual action happening here in all humans. So what in your mind, what's the difference between a reason and an excuse?
In my headspace, it's priority. If what I'm doing absolutely needs to get done, then it needs to get done, but for a higher priority interjecting its way in. My child needs me, somebody got hurt, those are instant, like those are reasons I can't do this. The other things like that's a lower priority to me. That I categorize that as an excuse.
So I mean, the honest conversation then is not that you have excuses, but you've decided that something else is more important. I was going to do this work, but I decided that watching kitten videos on Instagram was more important. That's okay. I mean, you get to choose.
Yeah. And maybe I do that categorizing a little bit too strongly, but that's what's helped me. And I beat myself up for excuses, but I think that's what I need to do to keep myself motivated. Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful for everybody else, but that's what I've determined in my head I have to do.
So there's a thing called the actor-observer effect. It's called the fundamental attribution or the fundamental attribution bias. And the fundamental means everybody does it. Attribution is how do you attribute cause? How do you say this is what caused the other thing? And bias means it's off course. So the actor-observer effect is this. If I do an action and it goes badly, it's not because I'm incompetent, it's because of all of these circumstances. If you do an action that screws up, it's not because of circumstances, it's because you're a loser. Okay, so when we're the observer of an event that goes badly, we say that it's a global characterological flaw. Johnny didn't get his homework done because he's an irresponsible bum. But Johnny says, I didn't get my homework done because, the dog ate my homework, or I did it, but I lost it, or, my sister had dialysis. Yeah, I don't know what it was, but we hear those other things. We say excuses. Johnny goes, I'm really competent. I just couldn't do it this time. And so our own reasons sound like excuses to other people. That's normal. That's just fundamental. That's how we're built to hear things that way. But I like your distinction of something else took priority. Okay, that's okay. If watching kitten videos on Instagram is more important than getting this work project done, okay. And you get to reap the benefit of pursuing your priorities. And that's cool.
Yeah.
You get a lot of pleasure out of watching cats, frolic, get into trouble and, whatever. Okay, then you chose that. That's immediately gratifying.
Well, I like this conversation because I'll go back to where we were just at, and that's what? What are we being consistent about? Is there an objective? Is there a goal? Is there an ultimate, plan for 5 years from now? Did that cat video align to that what we're consistent about? Or was it a distraction to that what?
If your priority, and I love that word, if your priority is hedonism, immediate pleasure, kitty cat videos all day long.
Go team kitty cat.
Go. Yeah. But if it's something else, then you've got to make those other things that priority. And to say yes to one thing means you have to say no to the other.
I love that.
So to decide comes from the Latin root word to cut. So you're cutting off your options. Based on your priority, you decide that is no longer an option for me anymore. And to execute a decision, when you execute something, what do? You kill it. So you're killing certain decisions. So you're deciding some things cannot be a priority.
Yeah. No, this is a great segue because this is the third and final section we had is the how do we get consistent. You went to the last item here that I had, but that's minimize distractions and cutting out things that aren't helping you reach that objective. And I absolutely love that. If you're saying yes to this, you're saying no to that.
Yes.
That's a great way to think of it. I'm going to go watch this cat video. That's a yes to that.
Rock on.
But you have to understand that is a no to meeting my objectives.
That is correct.
Yeah, interesting. So the other items, and you could probably have added quite a few more, and you've already touched on the first one, and that's habits. How do you stay consistent? Make it a habit.
Make it a habit. Set up a process so that you can do it almost mindlessly. That's what a habit is. A habit is a long string of behaviors that you can do without thinking about it. And if you can set up processes so that you can do long strings of productive behavior without thinking about it, your life will be immeasurably better.
I like how habits can make for consistency, but consistency can make habits. So
Yeah, it's a virtuous cycle.
yeah, I love that. I make my habit consistently in the morning, the first thing I get up, because I haven't showered yet. It's very quick and easy. I just get my shoes on and I walk out my door. I don't have
Yeah.
to get in my car and go to the gym and blah, blah, blah. So I'm consistently walking in the morning, and my habit is walking, which is exercising. And then we've already talked about this on other podcasts, habit stacking, where
Yeah.
now
What do you do?
I'm making phone calls, I'm listening to a book, I'm being productive,
Right.
not just in my health aspect of my life, but
In your
other.
mind,
Yeah.
and if the phone calls are work related, yeah, or even relationship related, that makes your life measurably better.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that one kind of also introduces the idea of time blocking. If I'm consistent about doing it in the morning, I'm blocking out that time. If I
Yeah.
don't block out that time and somebody inserts into my calendar, that hurts.
Yes, and the thing I like about time blocking is what it does is it gives you uninterrupted time. The biggest thief of our productivity is task switching. So every time we switch from one task to another, there's about a 20-minute gap where you're not up to speed on the next tasks. So anytime you get interrupted or anytime you shift your focus, it takes about 20 minutes to get back on task.
Yep.
So time blocking helps you become more efficient within that time because you're not switching tasks.
Focus mode on the Apple platform. I didn't quite know what to think about it when it first came up, but I love it. Because it's just as it sounds. It's you're focusing on what you're doing. Like when we have these podcasts, I put my computer in the Apple world. It's nice because it's my phone, it's my watch, it's everything in focus mode, so that I don't get an incoming call. It doesn't alert me of emails. All of these things. So my point is,
I'd have it in focus mode all the time.
yeah, yeah. No, I love it because when it's not on, right? My an email comes in and my watch pings me, and now what's that?
Yeah, I don't know how people live. I mean, I have a dumb watch, right? It's got a dial and I don't know how people do it with the constant interruptions on their wrist. I mean, the phones are bad enough, but constantly buzzing. I mean, I constantly see people looking at their watch, and I think, am I boring you? No, they're just answering a text. And I think, oh.
Yeah. No,
Put it in focus mode.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I think we can do that in our own life too, because I do have a smartwatch and I use it for a lot of things that are beneficial, but I understand the distractions, but I also monitor what it does when that thing dings on me, whether it's a text, whether it's an email or whatever. I monitor like, okay, where did my head go there? And then, by the way,
20
okay, I
minutes
did
to get
read.
back on task.
Yeah, yeah, boom, I got to get back, or whatever. So I think this, like the virtuous cycle you were just talking about and other topics we've had, your metacognition has helped me in that context as well.
I'm so pleased to hear that. I hope other people benefit as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think we already kind of talked about focus, the focus modes, but then not having distractions. That they're kind of am I focused or am I distracted? It's just kind of one side of the coin versus the other. And then I think and you can interject more as you see here, but the how is more the headspace of staying consistent. How do you do that? We've talked about some tips here, but also is we alluded to it earlier. Is this perfect? It's not going to be. I think if you just know that it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be consistent, and that's more powerful because you're not going to be.
Yeah, the world was built by B students, not the A students.
Well said.
They know it's good enough, and that's what makes it that's what makes the world go. And the reason is they've learned that is that it's iterative improvement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfection. It's good enough for now, and we'll fix it later. It'll get better later. It'll get better later. We all have these phones. This was not the first phone that Apple invented, and we're how many generations in? 16 generations in now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're better. If they had waited until they were this good, we'd never have had them.
Yeah, they have consistently put out a new phone every year. And they're crushing, arguably, if you look at market share, especially in the US, like 55, 50, 60% market share, like you've been iterative and they've been consistent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, same with Samsung. I use Apple products, but Samsung's killing it in the same way. The products that they made 10 years ago are not nearly as good as the products now, but they're good enough and they just keep improving them.
Well,
and
it's interesting.
That's how progress gets made.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that the two top market share companies are, as best I can tell, the most consistent out of everybody. I've seen a lot of companies come and go, and some have, made great strides in very short periods of time, but for whatever reason, they get distracted and they do something goofy and, they introduce a new feature and it doesn't quite fly, and they're just not consistent over time. So Apple and Samsung, as best I can tell in that space, as an example, they're the most consistent.
Yeah, I'll tell a story about delivery. I won't name the company, but they had a policy that it's going to get there when we say it'll get there. Well, they said it would get to me on a package. It would get to me by Thursday. It came across country and it sat in the local warehouse for 3 days. And I'm thinking, why don't you get it to me now? It's right here. No, they promised it Thursday, and it came on Thursday, right when they promised, even though it was just around the corner. Because what they realized is that consistency is better than whipsawing from over beating expectations to not beating expectations.
Mm-hmm.
What they got really good at this point in their history, or in that point of their history, was delivering it when they said they would.
Yeah.
And that sells a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's been a huge miss in our conversation of context of relationships. When you say Thursday, in a relationship, whether it's a close, intimate relationship or a friendship or whatever, that consistency is what sets kind of the trust, the foundation.
Yep.
And yours was a business relationship that, hey, they're consistently delivering my package the day they said they're going to do it. I can trust these guys.
Right. And that's what makes businesses successful. It's not that they always have the best out in front products, but they're products that are consistently, they're reliable. They're going to do the same thing every time, all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've shot past our half hour. We've covered a lot of territory here. I hope that we've talked about the importance of finding something to be consistent about, why you need to be consistent, and then a lot of meat here about how to stay consistent. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. But other than that, we want to make sure that folks know how to get a hold of you, Dr. Hall, and where they get some resources.
Yeah, you can reach me at my website, drrogerhall.com. You can reach me on Instagram and on X at Dr. Roger Hall.
Excellent.
And I have books, which are available. You can find out about them on my website. They're also available on Amazon. And I have an online course called Freak Out. If you'd like to take that, you can access that from my website, drrogerhall.com.
Excellent. So yeah, great resources, great conversation. Hopefully this is helpful in your life and certainly in your real estate business. So we really appreciate you coming on. We try to stay weekly. We also try to stay consistent as well, as best we can.
We've recorded about 20 of these so far. So That's pretty good.
Fairly consistent. Yeah. Yeah. I know some people are more machines than we are, but I think we're doing pretty good.
I think we're doing pretty good. Yeah, same time every week, unless I'm out.
That's right. That's right. All right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you joining the show. We appreciate you jumping on Dr. Hall. We wish everybody a blessed one. Thanks.
Thank you.